My phone vibrated against the nightstand at exactly 6:47 a.m. The buzzing sound against the wood felt aggressive, like an intruder in the quiet morning air. I rolled over, blinking against the gray light filtering through the curtains. The name on the screen made my stomach tighten into a cold, hard knot. Brad. My brother never called this early. In fact, Brad never called at all unless he needed bail money, a bridge loan, for his latest failed investment scheme, or to brag about something he hadn't actually earned. I cleared my throat, sat up, and swiped the green button. Victoria, Brad's voice came through, thick with a performance of grief that I saw through immediately. It was the same tone he used when he was 10 and broke our neighbor's window, pretending to be heartbroken so he wouldn't get grounded. I have terrible news. It's Mom. I didn't say a word. I just listened. The air in the room felt heavy, charged with the electricity of a storm about to break. She passed away last night, Vic. In her sleep, Brad continued, his voice cracking theatrically. The nursing home called me. It was peaceful. Her heart just stopped. I held the phone away from my ear for a second, staring at it. The audacity was breathtaking. It was a physical weight in my chest. I took a deep breath, the scent of fresh coffee and maple syrup wafting in from the kitchen. I'm so sorry to hear that, Brad, I said, keeping my voice flat, professional. It was the voice I used when I was auditing a company for fraud. The voice of a forensic accountant who knows the numbers don't lie, even if the people do. When did this happen? Around midnight, he lied. Look, I've already handled the arrangements. I authorized the cremation immediately. It's what she wanted. No fuss. No open casket. Of course. Cremation. No body, no autopsy, no evidence. It was sloppy, Brad. Even for you. And Vic, he added, the fake sadness evaporating, replaced by the sharp, entitled edge of the golden child. I've seen the will. She updated it last week with Dr. Lowe present as a witness. Everything goes to me. The house in the Hamptons, her investment portfolio, the savings. All of it. She felt you were too distant in her final months. She didn't want you there. I gripped the sheets. Distant. I repeated. Brad, you blocked my number from her phone. You banned me from the facility. She didn't want to see you, he snapped, his true colors bleeding through. Accept it. You get nothing. Don't even think about contesting the inheritance. I have the power of attorney, and I have the will. It's ironclad. The funeral, well, the memorial service, is Friday. Don't bother coming. It's for family and close friends only. You've made your choices. I see, I said. So you get the house. The one worth $2.5 million. It's my rightful inheritance, Victoria. I took care of her. I was there. Okay, Brad, I said, a small, cold smile touching my lips. If that's how it is. It is. Don't call me again. I have a lot of paperwork to file to get the assets released. Click. The line went dead. I sat there for a moment, listening to the silence, feeling the weight of his betrayal. It wasn't just greed, it was malice. He didn't just want the money, he wanted to hurt me. He wanted to erase me. I stood up, the hardwood floor cool beneath my feet, and walked out of the bedroom into the kitchen. The morning sun was streaming through the bay windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. Sitting at the kitchen island, dressed in a soft blue robe, was a woman with silver hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. She was carefully cutting a stack of blueberry pancakes. She looked up as I entered, her fork pausing halfway to her mouth. Well, she asked, her voice steady, though I saw the flash of pain in her eyes. Not physical pain, but the deep, searing pain of a mother realizing her son is a monster. I placed my phone on the counter. He did it, Mom. He called. He said you died at midnight. He said you left him everything and that I'm not welcome at the funeral. Helen Sterling, my mother, the woman Brad had just declared dead to the world, put down her fork. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just closed her eyes for a brief second, inhaling sharply. When she opened them again, the sadness was gone, replaced by a steely resolve I recognized from her days as a headmistress. He authorized my cremation, she asked quietly. Immediately, I confirmed. To hide the evidence. Mom looked down at her hands, the hands that had raised us, the hands that had signed checks for Brad's private schools, his cars, his bail. She twisted the ruby ring on her finger. I gave him every chance, Victoria, she whispered. I played the fool. I let him think I was losing my mind just to see how far he would go. I prayed. I prayed he would stop. That he would just once ask me how I felt, instead of asking where the checkbook was. She looked up at me, and the fire in her eyes matched my own. He wants a funeral on Friday, she asked. Yes. He told me not to come. Mom picked up her coffee mug, taking a slow, deliberate sip. Well, she said, a dry, dangerous smile spreading across her face. It would be rude of us to miss my own funeral, don't you think? I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat next to her. It's going to be a show, Mom. Good, she said, stabbing a piece of pancake. I've always liked the theater. It's showtime, Victoria. We ate in silence, the quiet before the war. Brad thought he had won the lottery. He thought he had the inheritance, the house, and the victory. He had no idea that the body he claimed to have cremated was sitting in my kitchen, fueled by caffeine, pancakes, and a cold fury that was about to burn his entire world to the ground. To understand why my mother was eating pancakes in my kitchen while my brother planned her funeral, we have to go back 6 months. That was when the golden child came home. Brad had always been the charmer. The one with the big dreams and the empty pockets. While I was pulling all-nighters studying for my CPA exams, Brad was networking in Ibiza, or launching a startup in Vegas that somehow always ended with him needing a wire transfer from Mom and Dad. After Dad passed away 3 years ago, Mom became his sole target. 6 months ago, Brad showed up at Mom's doorstep with 2 suitcases and a sob story about a misunderstood investment and a crazy ex-landlord. He moved into the guest room, promising it was only for a few weeks until he got back on his feet. He's trying, Vic, Mom had told me over the phone back then. He wants to help me around the house. But the help quickly turned into a siege. It started subtly. First, the longtime housekeeper, Mrs. Gable, was fired. Brad claimed she was stealing silver spoons. I knew Mrs. Gable, she was more honest than the Pope. But Brad insisted and Mom, wanting to keep the peace, let her go. Then came the isolation. Every time I called the house line, Brad picked up. Mom's sleeping, Vic. She's not feeling well today. She's confused, she thinks it's 1995. It upsets her to talk to you. I drove over there every weekend, but the gate code had been changed. When I banged on the door, Brad would crack it open, blocking my view with his broad shoulders, wearing that smug, sympathetic look that made me want to scream. She doesn't recognize you, Vic, he'd say, his voice dripping with fake concern. It's the dementia. Dr. Lowe says seeing you triggers her agitation. It's better if you stay away. Dr. Lowe. That was the second nail in the coffin. Dr. James Lowe wasn't a neurologist. He wasn't even Mom's primary care physician. He was Brad's golfing buddy, a man who had lost his medical license in 2 other states for overprescribing opioids, and was now running a shady concierge clinic. Suddenly, he was in charge of Mom's health. I remember the day I realized this wasn't just family dysfunction, it was a crime in progress. It was a Tuesday afternoon, about 3 months into Brad's occupation. I had managed to get a copy of Mom's bank statements, I was still a signatory on the main checking account, something Brad hadn't realized yet. I sat at my desk, my forensic accountant eyes scanning the lines of data. My heart hammered against my ribs. $5,000 cash withdrawal. $3,200 payment to Low Consultations. $12,000 transfer to CryptoKing LLC. The pattern was unmistakable. It wasn't just living expenses. It was a siphon. He was draining her. I drove straight to the house, bypassing the gate by climbing the side fence, a move I hadn't done since high school. I pounded on the front door, ignoring the doorbell. Brad opened it, holding a glass of scotch. It was 2 p.m. "Victoria," he sighed. "I told you, I know about the money, Brad," I hissed, shoving a printout of the bank statement into his chest. $12,000 for crypto. Are you insane? That's Mom's pension. He didn't even blink. He laughed. A dry, humorless sound. It's an investment for Mom. Diversifying the portfolio. You wouldn't understand, you're just a bean counter. I want to see her, I demanded, trying to push past him. He shoved me back. Hard. She signed a power of attorney last week, Vic, full medical and financial control. She trusts me. She knows you're just after her money. Me? I choked out. I'm the one paying for her health insurance. I'm the one who managed the estate for 5 years without taking a dime. She thinks you're stealing from her, Brad said, his eyes cold and dead. That's what I told her. That you're the reason her account is low. That you're the greedy one. With her memory the way it is, she believes me. She's scared of you, Vic. I felt the blood drain from my face. Gaslighting. He was gaslighting an 85-year-old woman into fearing her own daughter. You're sick, I whispered. I'm the favorite, he shrugged, taking a sip of scotch. Always have been. Now get off my property before I call the cops, and tell them you're harassing a senile old woman. I left that day, shaking with rage, but I knew I couldn't just fight him with shouting. I needed evidence. I needed a strategy. What Brad didn't know was that he had made a fatal error. He underestimated Mom. He thought she was a feeble old lady he could manipulate. He forgot she was a retired math teacher who could spot a liar from the back of a classroom. He forgot that while her body was slowing down, her mind was a steel trap. And he certainly didn't know about the burner phone I had hidden in the potting soil of her favorite orchid plant 6 months ago, just in case of emergencies. I sat in my car down the street, dialing the number, praying the battery was still alive. It rang once. Twice. Victoria. Mom's voice was a whisper, but it was clear. Lucid. Mom, I sobbed. Are you okay? Brad says you have dementia. I know what he says, she whispered, her voice trembling not with age but with fury. I hear him on the phone with his friends. He's putting something in my tea, Vic. It makes me sleepy. Makes my thoughts cloudy. But I stopped drinking it 3 days ago. I've been pouring it in the plant. Oh my God, I breathed. He wants the house, she said. He wants it all. He thinks I'm gone, Vic. He talks about me like I'm already dead. We're going to get you out, I promised. No, she said, and her voice hardened. Not yet. If we leave now, he gets away with what he's stolen. He needs to think he's won. He needs to think I'm helpless. I'm going to gather the receipts, Victoria. Every paper he forces me to sign, I'm marking it. I'm watching him. Mom, it's dangerous. I raised him, she said bitterly. I know his weaknesses. He's arrogant. He's sloppy. Let him dig his grave a little deeper. But stay ready, Victoria. When I give the signal, you come for me. That was the trap. Not the one Brad set for Mom, but the one Mom set for Brad. The golden child was about to learn that you never, ever underestimate a mother protecting her legacy. The signal came 3 days ago, at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. My phone lit up with a single text message from the burner phone. It wasn't from Mom. It was from Maria, a young night nurse Brad had hired recently because she was cheap and unlicensed. But Brad didn't know Maria had a conscience. The text read, "He's talking about upping the dose tonight. Says she needs to sleep deeply before the lawyer comes tomorrow. I'm scared. Come now. Back door is unlocked." My blood ran cold. Upping the dose wasn't caregiving, it was attempted murder. The lawyer coming meant he was going for the final kill, the transfer of the deed to the house. I didn't call the police. Not yet. Brad was charming, he'd talk his way out of it, claim I was the crazy intruder, and Mom would be lost in the system or, worse, accidentally, overdosed before they could intervene. I needed to extract the asset. I needed my mother. I dressed in black, yoga pants and a hoodie, and drove to the house, parking 3 blocks away. The suburban street was silent, the manicured lawns sleeping under the moonlight. It looked so peaceful, hiding the rot inside the colonial-style house at the end of the cul-de-sac. I crept through the neighbor's hedge, the smell of jasmine heavy in the air, reminding me of childhood summers. But tonight, the air tasted like fear. I reached the back door. The handle turned silently. Maria had kept her word. I slipped into the kitchen. It was filthy. Pizza boxes piled on the counter, empty beer bottles lining the sink. The house I grew up in, always pristine, now smelled of stale alcohol and neglect. My heart broke, but I shoved the emotion down. This was a tactical extraction. I moved silently down the hallway to the downstairs bedroom, where Brad had moved Mom for her safety. The door was ajar. Inside, a single nightlight cast a dim glow. Mom was lying on the bed, looking so small. Too small. My chest tightened. Was I too late? Mom? I whispered, kneeling beside her. Her eyes snapped open. They were groggy, but the recognition was instant. Vic, she breathed. I'm here. We're going. Maria gave me the pills, but I didn't swallow, Mom whispered, pulling a soggy tissue from her sleeve. Inside were 3 blue pills. He stood there, watched me. I hid them under my tongue. You're brilliant, I said, my voice shaking. Can you walk? I can run if I have to, she said, swinging her legs over the edge of the bed. She was frail, yes, but the adrenaline was doing its work. We were halfway to the door when a floorboard creaked above us. Brad. We froze. Heavy footsteps thudded directly overhead. Then, the sound of a toilet flushing. He was awake. Go, Mom urged, gripping my arm with surprising strength. We moved through the kitchen. I grabbed Mom's go bag, a small tote she had hidden behind the pantry with her journals and the evidence she had gathered. Just as we reached the back door, the kitchen light flooded on. I spun around, shielding Mom behind me. It was Maria. She stood there, eyes wide, holding a glass of water. She looked at us, then at the stairs where Brad's heavy footsteps were now descending. Go, Maria mouthed. She deliberately dropped the glass of water. Smash. What the hell was that? Brad's voice bellowed from the living room. Sorry, sir. I dropped a glass. Maria yelled back, her voice shaking but loud enough to cover the sound of the back door opening. We slipped out into the night. I practically carried Mom to the car. My heart was pounding a rhythm of terror and triumph against my ribs. We got her. We got her. As I buckled her into the passenger seat of my SUV, I looked back at the house. The lights were on. Brad was probably yelling at Maria. He had no idea his prisoner was gone. Drive, Mom said, staring straight ahead. I sped away, not breathing until we were 5 miles out. Where are we going? Mom asked. Hotel. No. My place. He doesn't know my new address since I moved last year. Remember? He never asked. Mom let out a short, bitter laugh. Right. He never asked. When we got to my apartment, the adrenaline crash hit us both. I made her tea, real tea, safe tea. We sat on my sofa, and for the first time in 6 months, she was free. He's going to panic when he finds me gone, Mom said, warming her hands on the mug. Let him, I said. I'll call the police in the morning. No, Mom said sharply. She looked at me, and that was the moment, the snap. The moment the victim died and the strategist was born. If we call the police now, it's a domestic dispute, she reasoned, her voice gaining strength. He'll claim I wandered off. He'll claim you kidnapped a dementia patient. He has Dr. Lowe's papers saying I'm incompetent. It'll be a mess. So what do? We let him think I'm dead, she said. I stared at her. What? If I'm missing, he can't get the money. If I'm dead, he executes the will. He'll make a move. He'll forge the death certificate if he has to. He's that desperate. I heard him on the phone with the loan sharks. He needs the money by Friday. Mom, that's insane. Is it? She reached into her tote bag and pulled out a small black notebook. I've been tracking his calls. He owes $280,000. If he doesn't pay by the weekend, he's in trouble. He needs me dead, Victoria. So let's give him what he wants. And that's when the plan was hatched. We wouldn't just escape, we would entrap him. We would let him dig the hole, jump in, and pull the dirt over his own head. So when Brad called me this morning, lying about her death, we weren't surprised. We were waiting. He didn't check the room this morning. He probably just assumed she died in the night, or, more likely, he arranged for a fake certificate with Dr. Lowe without even looking at the body, intending to have the funeral home pick up an empty box. He was so arrogant, so sure of his control, that he didn't even verify the asset was still in the building. Now, sitting in my kitchen, Mom finished her pancakes. I need a new outfit for Friday, she said thoughtfully. Something dramatic. Maybe red. I smiled, a genuine smile this time. I think black is more appropriate for a funeral, Mom. But we can accessorize. The rescue was over. The war had just begun. The days leading up to the funeral were a masterclass in deception. While Mom was hidden away in my guest room, watching soap operas and helping me organize our evidence, I had to play the role of the grieving, defeated sister. Brad was moving fast. Terrifyingly fast. On Wednesday, he sent me a digital document via email. The subject line read, Waiver of Contest, Estate of Helen Sterling. I opened it. It was a legal document demanding I waive all rights to challenge the will in exchange for nothing. Absolutely nothing. Not even a family photo album. I called him. I had to sell the performance. Brad, I said, making my voice wobble. I got the email. This seems harsh. Can't I just have Dad's old watch? Or the photo albums? The assets are frozen until you sign, Vic, he said, his voice clipped. He sounded stressed. Good. The faster you sign, the faster I can sort through things and maybe send you a box of knickknacks. But I need that signature today. The funeral home won't release the remains until the estate is settled. That was a lie. A blatantly illegal lie. Funeral homes don't hold remains hostage for probate. But Brad didn't know the law, he only knew bullying. I'll sign it, I sniffled. I want this to be over. Good girl, he said. The condescension in his voice made my skin crawl. Send it back by noon. I printed the document. I took a pen, a specific pen I kept for joke checks and gag gifts. It was filled with ink that disappears completely when exposed to heat. I signed my name with a flourish, Victoria Sterling. I scanned it and emailed it back to him. Then, I took a lighter to the original paper and watched my name vanish, leaving a blank line. If he ever tried to use the physical copy in court, if I had mailed it, it would be blank. But the digital copy would give him the confidence to proceed. It was the bait. He got it, I told Mom, checking my inbox. He replied, received. See you Friday. Don't make a scene. Mom was sitting at my dining table, surrounded by bank statements. He's transferring the deed, she said, pointing to a transaction on her iPad, which we had regained access to. He submitted the request to the county clerk an hour ago, using the power of attorney and the death certificate. Wait, I frowned. How did he get a death certificate? You're alive. Dr. Lowe, Mom said grimly. Look at this. She pulled up a file she had hacked into. Mom might be 68, but she taught computer science in high school for 30 years. She knew her way around a PDF. It was a death certificate. Name, Helen Sterling. Date of death, October 14th, cause, cardiac arrest. Signed, Dr. James Lowe. That idiot, I breathed. That absolute idiot. He just committed a felony. Falsifying a death certificate is prison time. He's desperate, Mom said. Brad promised him a payout. Lowe is in debt too. Birds of a feather. The reality of what they had done was sinking in. They had erased a human being on paper for cash. If I hadn't gotten her out, if she had actually been in that bed, would they have made it a reality? The thought made me nauseous. Thursday was the day of preparation. I went to the bank. Not to withdraw money, but to meet with the manager, an old friend. I needed the receipts, the official, stamped bank records showing the transfers Brad had made over the last 6 months. The loan to himself. The consulting fees to Dr. Lowe. The jewelry store purchases. I also called my lawyer, Elena Vance. Elena was a shark in Louboutins. When I told her the story, that my dead mother was sitting in my living room eating popcorn, she was silent for a full minute. You're kidding, Elena said. I wish I were. I need you at the funeral, Elena. And I need you to bring the sheriff. On what grounds? Fraud. Elder abuse. Attempted murder. And a live victim. I'll be there, Elena said, her voice dropping an octave into her litigation mode. And I'll bring the warrants. If this is true, Brad isn't just losing the house, he's going to federal prison. Thursday night, the night before the funeral, I couldn't sleep. Mom came into my room, holding 2 cups of cocoa. You okay? She asked. I'm terrified, I admitted. What if he has a gun? What if he hurts you? He's a coward, Victoria, Mom said firmly. Cowards crumble when the light is turned on. We are the light. She sat on the edge of my bed. I'm sorry I didn't listen to you sooner. About the money. About him. He's your son, Mom. You loved him. I loved the idea of him, she corrected. I loved the little boy who used to bring me dandelions. But that boy is gone. The man who lives in my house is a stranger. And tomorrow we evict the stranger. We went over the plan one last time. The funeral was at 10 a.m. at the Sterling Memorial Chapel, no relation, just irony. Brad had invited his investor friends, his country club buddies, and anyone he wanted to impress with his new wealth. He turned a funeral into a networking event. I would arrive at 10:05. Alone. Elena and the police would wait in the back office. Mom would wait in the tinted limo parked around the corner, ready for her cue. "You have to sign the guest book," Mom reminded me. "Make sure there's a record you were there." "I will." "And Victoria?" "Yeah." "Don't cry. He wants you to cry. Don't give him the satisfaction." "I won't," I promised. The next morning, Friday, I put on my black dress. It was sharp, tailored, and intimidating. I pulled my hair back into a tight bun. I applied my makeup, armor for the modern woman. I looked in the mirror. I didn't look like a grieving daughter. I looked like an executioner. "Ready?" Mom asked. She was wearing a stunning crimson scarf over her black coat. She looked alive. Vibrant. "Ready," I said. We got into the car. The sky was gray and overcast, perfect funeral weather. As we drove toward the chapel, I felt a strange sense of calm. The anxiety was gone. Now there was only the cold logic of the trap snapping shut. Brad thought he was attending a coronation. He had no idea he was walking into an ambush. My forensic accounting training teaches one fundamental truth: numbers tell stories that people are afraid to speak. While Brad was busy shaking hands and accepting fake condolences at the chapel, I was mentally reviewing the financial dossier I had compiled over the last 48 hours. This wasn't just about emotional revenge, this was a criminal investigation, and I had the smoking gun. The receipts were damning. On Wednesday night, after hacking into Mom's accounts, with her permission and passwords, I had reconstructed the timeline of the theft. It was worse than we thought. Exhibit A, the mortgage. Brad had forged Mom's signature on a home equity line of credit, HELOC, 3 months ago. He pulled out $150,000 against the house. Where did it go? Transaction, $50,000 to VIP DraftKings. Transaction, $40,000 to Porsche Leasing LLC. Transaction, $25,000 cash withdrawal at a casino in Atlantic City. He hadn't invested it. He had gambled and driven it away. He was paying for a lifestyle he couldn't afford with the equity of the house Mom had worked 40 years to pay off. Exhibit B, the jewelry. This one hurt the most. Mom had a vintage sapphire necklace, an heirloom from her grandmother. It was missing from the safe. I tracked a deposit of $12,000 into Brad's personal account from Gold and Pawn for You. He pawned a family heirloom worth $50,000 for a fraction of its value to pay a bookie. Exhibit C, the kickbacks. Dr. Lowe's consulting fees were regular. $3,000 a month. But I found a corresponding email thread on Brad's laptop, which he had foolishly synced to the family cloud. Subject, dosage. Low, she's resistant to the sedatives. I can write a script for haloperidol, but it's risky at her age. Brad, just write it. I need her pliable by Monday. The notary is coming. That email was the nail in the coffin. It proved premeditation. It proved conspiracy to commit assault and fraud. As I pulled up to the funeral home, I touched the folder in my bag. It felt heavy, like a brick. The parking lot was full of expensive cars, Range Rovers, Teslas, Mercedes. Brad's friends. Or rather, the people he owed money to or was trying to scam. I stepped out of the car. The air was crisp. I walked up the stone steps of the chapel. Inside, the atmosphere was grotesque. It didn't feel like a funeral. There was soft jazz playing, not hymns, but elevator jazz. There was a catering spread that looked more appropriate for a wedding: shrimp cocktail, champagne, petit fours. Brad was standing near the front, wearing a suit that looked brand new, probably bought with Mom's credit card. He was holding a glass of champagne, laughing with a man in a loud checkered suit. Laughing, I thought. At his mother's funeral. I walked in. Heads turned. The disowned sister. The greedy one. I could hear the whispers. That's her. The one who abandoned her. Brad said she tried to sue him for the house. I kept my head high, my face a mask of indifference. I walked straight to the guest book. I picked up the pen and wrote my name in bold, black ink. Victoria Sterling. Then, I looked up and locked eyes with Brad. His smile faltered for a fraction of a second, then he composed himself and walked over, arms open wide in a mock gesture of comfort. Vic, he said loud enough for the room to hear. I'm surprised you came. After everything. He went for a hug. I sidestepped him. I wouldn't miss it, Brad, I said coolly. It's a big day for you. It's a hard day, he corrected, putting on his sad face again. But we have to be strong. For Mom. Right. For Mom. I looked around the room. Nice spread. Shrimp. Mom was allergic to shellfish. Brad stiffened. It's for the guests, Victoria. Try to have some class. Where is she? I asked, looking at the front of the room. There was an urn. A shiny, gold urn that looked like a bowling trophy. It was placed on a pedestal surrounded by lilies. She's right there, Brad said solemnly. At peace. I looked at the urn. I knew it was empty. Or maybe filled with wood ash from the fireplace. It didn't matter. The prop was in place. I need to talk to you, I said, dropping my voice. About the finances. Brad rolled his eyes. Jesus, Vic. Now? Can't you wait until the service is over? You're obsessed with money. I just want to know how you're going to pay off the Hellock, I said loud enough for the man in the checkered suit to hear. Brad's face went white. He grabbed my elbow and hissed, "Shut up. There is no Hellock." There is, I whispered back. And the $280,000 gambling debt. Does the guy in the checkered suit know you're using Mom's life insurance to pay him back? Brad's grip tightened on my arm. You don't know what you're talking about. You're crazy. Just like Mom was. Am I? I pulled my arm free. I'm an auditor, Brad. I follow the money. And the money leads straight to prison. For the first time, I saw genuine fear in his eyes. He looked around nervously. You have no proof. You have nothing. Get out. No, I smiled. I think I'll stay for the eulogy. I hear you prepared a speech. I turned and walked to the front row, sitting down right in the center. The seat reserved for the chief mourner. Brad stared at me, sweat beading on his forehead. He signaled to a security guard by the door. But before the guard could move, a woman stepped out from the shadows of the side alcove. She wasn't Mom. Not yet. It was Sarah. Brad's wife. I hadn't seen Sarah in 2 years. She looked thin, tired, and nervous. But she caught my eye and gave a barely perceptible nod. The receipts weren't just paper. They were people too. And I had found the one person Brad had underestimated even more than me. Sarah Sterling had always been a ghost in her own marriage. When Brad brought her around, she was quiet, submissive, always looking at the floor. Brad treated her like a trophy that had lost its shine, ignoring her, interrupting her, or making subtle jokes about her intelligence in front of the family. But yesterday, Sarah had found me. I was sitting in my car outside the police station, waiting for Elena, when a timid knock rapped on my window. I rolled it down. Sarah stood there, shaking, wearing oversized sunglasses and a scarf wrapped tight. Victoria, she whispered. Sarah? What are you doing here? I followed you, she admitted. I saw you leave your apartment. I need to talk. Please. Before Brad finds out I'm gone. We went to a diner 3 towns over. Sarah ordered black coffee, her hands trembling so much she spilled it on the saucer. "He's going to leave me," she said abruptly. "What?" "Brad. He's going to leave me once the inheritance comes through." I found the papers in his briefcase. Divorce papers. And flight bookings. One way to Belize. I stared at her. "He's running." "He has to," Sarah said, tears sliding out from under her glasses. "He owes too much money to bad people. He plans to liquidate Helen's estate, sell the house, cash out the stocks, and disappear. He's not taking me. And he's certainly not taking the kids." "The kids?" I asked. "Where are they?" "With my sister. I got them out yesterday." Sarah took a breath and reached into her oversized purse. She pulled out a thick, leather-bound notebook. "He keeps everything in here. He doesn't trust computers with the real stuff. He calls it his black book." She slid the book across the table. I opened it. My breath caught. It was a ledger. Handwritten. Loan from Vinny, $50,000. Due November 1st, threat level, high. Sell mom's jewelry, plus $12K. Bribe for Dr. Lowe, minus $5,000. Fake cremation cost, minus $800. Wait, I pointed to the last entry. Fake cremation. He didn't cremate her, Sarah whispered. He hired a shady transport service to take what he thought was the body to a pauper's grave facility. Just to get rid of it cheap. He pocketed the $5,000 he withdrew for the funeral expenses. I felt a surge of nausea. Even in death, as far as he knew, he was cheaping out on Mom to steal a few extra grand. "Why are you giving me this, Sarah?" I asked. "If he goes down, you lose everything too." Sarah took off her sunglasses. Her left eye was bruised. Yellow and purple. "He hit me," she said, her voice devoid of emotion. "Last night. I asked him about the Belize tickets. He backhanded me. Said if I opened my mouth, I'd end up like Helen, medicated and forgotten." She looked me in the eye. "I want him destroyed, Victoria. I want him to rot. I don't care about the money. I just want my kids to be safe from him." I reached across the table and took her hand. "He's going to rot, Sarah. I promise you." Back in the present, at the funeral chapel, Sarah walked past me. She didn't stop, but she dropped a small folded piece of paper into my lap as she brushed by toward the family seating area. I unfolded it surreptitiously. It read, "He has the fake deed in his jacket pocket. He plans to show it to the investors after the speech to secure a new loan." I looked up at Sarah. She sat down in the front row, looking at the empty urn with a blank expression. She was playing her part perfectly. The grieving widow. The room was filling up. Dr. Lowe arrived. He looked sweaty, nervous. He kept checking his watch. He sat 3 rows back. Then, the music stopped. Brad walked to the podium. He adjusted the microphone. He looked handsome, I had to admit. He had that politician's charm that fooled everyone. He looked out at the crowd, his eyes glistening with fake tears. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice deep and somber. "We are here to celebrate the life of Helen Sterling. A mother. A teacher. A saint." He paused for effect. "Mom was a complicated woman," he continued. "But in her final months, we grew closer than ever. I was blessed, truly blessed, to be by her side when she took her last breath. I felt my fists clench. Liar. She told me," Brad said, looking up at the ceiling, "Brad, take care of the house. Take care of the family. She trusted me with her legacy. And though my sister Victoria..." He looked directly at me. The spotlight of the room shifted. Though Victoria couldn't be here for Mom in the end, due to her own personal struggles. Mom forgave her. And so do I. A murmur went through the crowd. He was publicly shaming me. He was painting me as the estranged, unstable daughter to justify why I was cut out of the will. It was brilliant. It was evil. Mom wanted me to lead this family forward, Brad said, his voice rising. And to honor her, I plan to turn the Sterling estate into a foundation. A place of. He was rambling now, selling his vision to the investors in the room. He was pitching a business deal at a funeral. I have the plans right here, Brad said, patting his breast pocket. And I know Mom is smiling down on us. I checked my watch. 10:25 a.m. I stood up. The sound of my chair scraping against the floor echoed in the silent room. Brad stopped talking. He looked at me, annoyed. Victoria, please. Sit down. This isn't the time. Actually, Brad, I said, my voice projecting clearly to the back of the room. I think this is exactly the time. Security. Brad snapped, pointing at me. I wouldn't do that, I said calmly, stepping into the aisle. Because Mom isn't smiling down on us, Brad. I pulled a remote control from my pocket. I had synced it to the chapel's AV system 10 minutes before the service started. The password was password 123, honestly. She's watching you right now. I pressed the button. The large projection screen behind the podium, which was displaying a photo of Mom, flickered. A video started playing. It wasn't a montage of memories. It was a grainy, black and white video from a hidden camera. Date stamp, last Tuesday. 11:30 p.m. The video showed Brad sitting at Mom's kitchen table. He was holding a piece of paper against the window glass, tracing a signature. Audio, stupid old bat, shaking hand makes this impossible, there. Helen Sterling. Done. The crowd gasped. Brad froze. He stared at the screen, his mouth open. Turn it off, he screamed. Turn it off. It's a deep fake. Is it? I asked. I pressed the button again. The screen went black. That was you forging the deed, Brad, I said. And here. I pointed to the back of the room. Is the witness you didn't count on. The double doors at the back of the chapel swung open with a loud bang. The room went deadly silent. And then, the sound of motorized wheels whirring against the carpet. Mom rolled in. She was in a wheelchair, for effect, dressed in a stunning red suit. She looked like a vengeful queen returning to reclaim her throne. Flanking her were 2 uniformed police officers and my lawyer, Elena. Brad dropped the microphone. It hit the floor with a screech of feedback that made everyone wince. He looked from the screen, to me, to the woman at the back of the room. He looked like he was seeing a ghost. His face turned a color I had never seen on a human being, a mix of gray and green. Mom stopped the wheelchair in the middle of the aisle. She looked straight at Brad. Hello, son, she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried to every corner of the room. I heard you authorized my cremation. I must say, the service is a bit tacky. The silence in the chapel was heavy, suffocating. It was the kind of silence that happens when reality snaps and breaks in front of 100 people. Brad was trembling. Visibly shaking. He gripped the podium like it was the only thing keeping him upright. Mom, he stuttered. But. Dr. Lowe said he signed. I signed what you paid me to sign. Dr. Lowe shrieked from the third row, jumping up. He panicked. The rat was abandoning the ship. He told me she was dead. He said he checked the pulse. I just did the paperwork. Shut up, James. Brad roared, his voice cracking. Officers, Mom said calmly, pointing a manicured finger at Dr. Lowe. That man falsified a death certificate. I believe that's a felony. One of the officers moved toward Dr. Lowe, who slumped back into his seat, putting his head in his hands. Brad stared at Mom. His brain was trying to process the impossible. But I saw you. You were. I was drugged, Mom said, her voice turning into ice. By you. With pills you forced Maria to give me. But I didn't take them all, Brad. I spit them out. I watched you. She rolled closer, the wheels of her chair silent on the carpet. I watched you steal my jewelry. I watched you gamble away my pension. I listened to you on the phone, laughing about how you were going to put me in a state facility once you got the house. No, Brad whispered. No, Mom, I was doing it for us. To save the estate. For us. I stepped forward, standing next to Mom. You took a helic out on the house, Brad. You forged her signature. You were going to sell it and run to Belize with Sarah's kids. Brad's eyes darted to Sarah in the front row. Sarah stood up slowly. She took off her sunglasses, revealing the bruising around her eye. The crowd gasped again. The investors in the room were now backing away, whispering furiously. The man in the checkered suit was already heading for the exit. You hit her? Mom asked, her voice trembling with a new level of rage. You hit your wife. She wouldn't shut up. Brad yelled, losing control. The mask had fully slipped. The charming golden child was gone, replaced by a cornered, vicious animal. Everyone was coming at me. You with your constant neediness. Sarah with her whining. Vic with her judgment. I deserved that money. I earned it. I dealt with you for 6 months, wiping your drool, listening to your stories. I earned every penny. You earned nothing, Mom said. You stole. You lied. You cheated. Brad laughed, a manic, high-pitched sound. So what? You're alive. Congrats. But I have the power of attorney. I have the deed. I filed it yesterday. The house is mine. You can't undo it. He pulled the paper from his pocket, the one Sarah had warned me about. He waved it in the air like a flag. It's recorded. It's legal property of Brad Sterling. I looked at Elena. Elena smiled and stepped forward, adjusting her glasses. Actually, Mr. Sterling, Elena said, her voice projecting authority. It's not. Who are you? Brad spat. I'm Mrs. Sterling's attorney. And I'm afraid the power of attorney you used to transfer that deed is void. It is not. She signed it. She did, Elena nodded. But the asset she transferred, the house, didn't belong to her at the time. Brad froze. What? Mom smiled. It was the smile of the teacher who just failed a student who tried to cheat on the final exam. 5 years ago, Mom said clearly. After your father died, I knew you would come for the money eventually, Brad. I knew you couldn't help yourself. So Victoria and I set up an irrevocable trust. A trust? Brad whispered. The Sterling Family Trust, I explained. The house, the cottage, the investment accounts, they were all transferred into the trust 5 years ago. I am the trustee. Mom is the beneficiary. Which means, Elena finished, Helen Sterling owns nothing in her own name. She couldn't sign the house over to you even if she wanted to. The deed you forged. It's worthless. You transferred a title that didn't exist. The paper in Brad's hand suddenly looked very limp. You set me up, Brad choked out. No, Mom said. I protected myself. Because I knew my son was a predator. Brad looked around the room. He saw the disgust on the faces of his friends. He saw the police officers closing in. He saw Sarah looking at him with pure hatred. He realized it was over. I can fix this, he stammered, looking at the man in the checkered suit who was near the door. Vinny, wait. It's a misunderstanding. Mr. Sterling, the taller police officer said, stepping onto the podium. You're under arrest. For what? Brad screamed, backing away. Attempted fraud. It's a civil matter. For attempted murder, the officer said. We have the toxicology report from your mother's hair samples. High levels of sedatives. And we have the testimony of Nurse Maria, who turned herself in this morning. Brad's knees buckled. And the officer continued, pulling out handcuffs. For the assault of your wife. And about 20 counts of wire fraud. Brad tried to run. It was a pathetic attempt. He lunged toward the side exit, but he tripped over the funeral wreath, a ring of white lilies that said "Beloved Mother." He face-planted onto the carpet. The officers were on him in a second. Get off me, he screamed as they cuffed him. Mom. Mom, tell them to stop. I'm your son. Mom. He looked up from the floor, tears streaming down his face. Real tears this time. Tears of self-pity. Mom looked down at him. She didn't look sad anymore. She looked relieved. You are my son, Brad, she said softly. And that is my greatest failure. But today, I'm correcting it. She turned her wheelchair around. Get him out of my sight. The officers hauled Brad to his feet. He was sobbing, begging, blaming everyone but himself. As they dragged him down the aisle, past the empty urn, past the shocked guests, he locked eyes with me. You did this, he screamed at me. You jealous witch. You did this. I didn't say anything. I just held up the receipts, the folder of evidence. No, Brad, I thought. You did this. We just turned on the lights. The chaos that followed Brad's arrest was unlike anything I had ever experienced. The funeral turned into a crime scene investigation. Guests were interviewed. Dr. Lowe was led away in handcuffs, weeping about his medical license. But amidst the sirens and the shouting, there was a strange sense of peace in the center of the storm. Mom sat in her wheelchair, though she didn't really need it, she said it was comfortable, near the altar. People were hesitant to approach her, as if she really were a ghost. I walked over to her. Sarah was standing next to her, holding Mom's hand. Are you okay? I asked both of them. I'm tired, Mom admitted, taking a deep breath. But I feel lighter. It's done. The lie is over. He's gone, Sarah whispered, touching her bruised cheek. He's really gone. He's not coming back, I assured her. With the evidence we have, the forgery, the drugs, the assault, Elena says he's looking at 10 to 15 years. And the gambling debts, well, Vinny looked pretty unhappy. Brad is safer in prison than out. Mom looked at the empty urn on the pedestal. What do we do with that? She asked, pointing at the gold trophy. I walked over to it. I unscrewed the lid. Inside, there was a plastic bag. I pulled it out. It was kitty litter. Unbelievable, I laughed, holding it up. He didn't even use ash. He used kitty litter. Mom started to laugh. Then Sarah giggled. And then, the three of us were standing in the middle of a funeral home, laughing hysterically, tears running down our faces. It was the release of 6 months of terror, grief, and repression. He was so cheap. Mom wiped her eyes. Even in my death, he bought generic kitty litter. We laughed until we cried, and then we just cried. We hugged each other, 3 women who had survived the hurricane of a narcissist and come out standing. Later that afternoon, we went back to the house. The real house. The police had cleared it as a crime scene. We walked in. It was a mess, trash everywhere, but it was still Mom's home. We have a lot of cleaning up to do, I said, kicking a beer can across the floor. We have time, Mom said. She walked over to the mantelpiece where a picture of Dad stood. She picked it up and dusted it off. We have all the time in the world now. That night, we ordered pizza, with extra cheese, because Mom's cholesterol didn't matter today. We sat on the porch, watching the sun set. You know, Mom said, looking at me. I always worried about you, Victoria. I thought you were too hard. Too cold. I worried that you worked too much because you didn't know how to love. I looked down at my slice of pizza. I just wanted to be safe, Mom. I wanted to make sure we were safe. I know, she said, reaching over to squeeze my hand. I see that now. Your hardness, it was a shield. For all of us. You were the strong one. I was the weak one. You weren't weak, I said firmly. You survived him. You outsmarted him. Only because I had you, she said. Brad called you cold. But you have the warmest fire I know. You burn for justice, Vic. I smiled. I guess I do. Sarah came out onto the porch, holding her phone. My sister is bringing the kids over tomorrow. They want to see Grandma. I can't wait, Mom beamed. We sat there as the stars came out. The nightmare was over. Brad was in a cell. The house was safe. The money was safe. But more importantly, the truth was out. We often think family is about blood. About loyalty no matter what. But today proved that blood is just biology. Family is about who shows up. Who protects you. Who believes you. Brad was my brother by blood, but he was my enemy by choice. Sarah was my sister-in-law, but now, she was just my sister. So, Mom said, breaking the silence. Since I'm officially dead according to some paperwork Dr. Lowe filed, do I have to pay taxes this year? I laughed. Nice try, Mom. We have to go to the courthouse on Monday to resurrect you legally. And yes, you still have to pay taxes. Darn, she grinned. Well, it was worth asking. She looked at the moon. He called and said I got nothing, I murmured, remembering the phone call that started it all. He was wrong, Mom said softly. You got everything, Victoria. You got the truth. You got your mother back. And you got your dignity. And the house, I added practically. And the house, she agreed. Now pass me another slice. Being dead makes you hungry. The parking lot of the funeral home was a chaotic symphony of flashing blue lights and squawking police radios. I stood near the entrance, watching the officers load Brad into the back of a squad car. He wasn't screaming anymore. He was slumped over, his forehead pressed against the glass, looking small, defeated, and utterly pathetic. But the real drama wasn't happening in the squad car. It was happening right there on the sidewalk, where my lawyer, Elena, was dismantling Brad's entire reality for the detectives. I walked over, needing to hear it. Needing to witness the moment the final nail was hammered in. He's claiming ownership of the property, a detective was saying, scribbling in his notepad. He says he has a signed deed transfer dated yesterday. Elena laughed. It was a sharp, dangerous sound. She pulled a thick file from her briefcase, the royal flush we had been holding onto for 5 years. Detective, Elena said, her voice carrying over the noise of the sirens. Mr. Sterling could have a deed signed by the President of the United States, and it wouldn't matter. He was trying to transfer an asset that Helen Sterling hasn't owned since 2019. I stepped in next to her. Tell them about the trust, Elena. Elena opened the file. The Sterling family estate is held in an irrevocable trust. Victoria here is the sole trustee. Helen is the beneficiary with a lifetime right of occupancy. Legally speaking, Helen Sterling owns her clothes, her books, and her cat. She does not own the house. She does not own the investment portfolio. Therefore, she cannot sign them away, even if she wanted to. And she certainly can't be coerced into signing them away while drugged. The detective looked at the documents, then back at Brad in the car. He let out a low whistle. So, even if his plan had worked, even if she had died, he would have inherited nothing, I finished. The trust stipulates that upon Helen's death, the assets remain in the trust for the benefit of her grandchildren. Brad was written out 5 years ago when he stole Dad's vintage Mustang and sold it for parts. I looked at the squad car. Brad was watching us. He couldn't hear us, but he saw the documents. He saw Elena pointing at the trust seal. I saw the realization hit him through the glass. He hadn't just lost today. He had been playing a game he had already lost 5 years ago. He was fighting for a prize that was never on the table. That realization, that his mother had outsmarted him half a decade before he even started his scheme, was the sweetest victory of all. It wasn't just justice, it was a masterclass in boundary setting. Mom rolled her wheelchair up beside me. She had wiped the funeral makeup off, but she still looked fierce. "Is he looking?" she asked. "He's looking," I said. Mom didn't wave. She didn't flip him off. She just turned her back to him. It was the most powerful thing she could have done. She rendered him irrelevant. "Let's go home," she said. "I have a house to scrub." We drove back to the house that Brad thought was his ticket to freedom. Walking through the front door felt like entering a battlefield after the smoke had cleared. The place was a disaster. It smelled of stale beer, old pizza, and Brad's cheap cologne. But as I walked through the living room, my forensic accountant brain kicked into overdrive. I wasn't just cleaning up trash, I was securing the crime scene. "Don't touch anything in the office," I told Sarah, who had come back with us. "I need to document everything for the prosecution." We spent the next 6 hours doing a forensic audit of the physical house. And what we found was chilling. It wasn't just the financial theft, it was the psychological warfare he had prepared. In the guest room where he had stayed, I found a stack of brochures under the mattress. Shady Pines Assisted Living, state-funded. Discount cremation services. Belize citizenship by investment programs. He had it all mapped out. The timeline was terrifying. Friday, the fake funeral. Monday, the house sale, to a cash buyer he had lined up, the guy in the checkered suit. Wednesday, put Mom in a state home under a Jane Doe alias or simply let the overdose happen. Thursday, flight to Belize. I sat on the floor, surrounded by these brochures, feeling a cold sweat. He wasn't just a bad son. He was a sociopath. He had planned to discard our mother like a piece of furniture he couldn't sell. "Vic?" I looked up. Sarah was standing in the doorway, holding a small velvet box. She looked pale. "I found this in his gym bag," she whispered. I took the box. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was Mom's wedding ring. The diamond solitaire Dad had given her 40 years ago. The ring she never took off. He took it off her finger, I choked out. While she was drugged. "There's a receipt," Sarah said, pointing to a slip of paper tucked in the lid. "He pawned it. And then he bought it back." "Why would he buy it back?" "Look at the date," Sarah said. "He bought it back yesterday. He was going to give it to his girlfriend." I stared at her. "Girlfriend?" "The nurse," Sarah said, her voice dead. "Maria wasn't just a hired nurse, Vic. Before she turned on him, they were sleeping together. She told me at the station. That's why she finally cracked. She realized he was going to dump her too and run to Belize alone. The layers of betrayal were endless. He had taken the symbol of his parents' marriage, a 40-year union of love and sacrifice, and used it as a trinket for his mistress to buy her silence. I snapped the box shut. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the quiet room. Add it to the evidence pile, I said, my voice steady. We aren't just sending him to prison, Sarah. We are burying him under the weight of his own sins. That night, we didn't sleep. We worked. We built the case that would ensure Brad never saw the outside of a cell again. We were three women fueled by coffee and rage, turning paperwork into a weapon. And let me tell you, there is no force on earth more powerful than a woman who has finally said enough. The next few weeks were a blur of depositions, meetings with the district attorney, and digging through the wreckage of Brad's financial life. If you think the funeral was the climax, you're wrong. The funeral was just the explosion. Now we were sifting through the debris, and every piece of debris told a story of entitlement and greed that made my blood boil. I sat in the DA's office on a rainy Tuesday, 3 weeks after the arrest. Across from me sat Assistant District Attorney Miller, a sharp woman who looked like she ate fraudsters for breakfast. Next to me was Mom, looking revitalized, and Sarah, who was looking freer than I'd ever seen her. We have the bank records, Miller said, tapping a thick binder. But I want to walk through the black book Sarah provided. It establishes intent. It proves this wasn't a crime of passion or desperation, but a calculated, long-term con. She opened the leather ledger Sarah had given me at the diner. Seeing Brad's handwriting, spiky and aggressive, gave me chills. Page 1, Miller read. Dated 6 months ago. Entry, Mom is slipping. Use it. Mom flinched. I reached over and held her hand. He targeted you, Miller said gently to Mom. He didn't come home because he lost his apartment. He came home because he sensed vulnerability. He saw you were lonely after your husband passed, and he weaponized that. I let him in, Mom whispered. Predators are good at getting invited in, Miller corrected. That's not on you. We went through the ledger item by item. It was the anatomy of a scam. The isolation phase, entry, fired the maid. Too nosy. $500 saved. Entry, changed Wi-Fi password. Told Mom the internet is broken. She can't email Vic. The gaslighting phase, entry, moved Mom's glasses. She thinks she lost them again. Confusion increasing. Good. Entry, low suggests haloperidol. Will make her pliable for the notary. The liquidation phase, entry, pawn silver set, $2,000. Entry, cashed out Dad's bonds, $15,000. Forged signature perfect. Entry, house appraisal came in at 2.5 M. Jackpot. But the entry that broke me wasn't about money. It was near the back of the book, dated 2 days before the funeral. Entry, dog is a nuisance. Barking when I lock Mom in room. Take to shelter on Friday morning. Tell Mom it ran away. Buster. Mom's golden retriever. Where is Buster? I asked, panic rising in my throat. I hadn't seen the dog at the house. I assumed he was in the yard. He's safe, Sarah cut in quickly. Brad told me to take him to the pound last week. I took him to my sister's instead. He's sleeping on her couch right now. Mom let out a sob of relief. He was going to kill my dog. He was erasing you, Mrs. Sterling, Miller said, closing the book. He was erasing every trace of your life, your money, your jewelry, your communication, your pet, so he could replace it with his own reality. It's classic narcissistic annihilation. The DA looked at us. With this book, plus the trust documents, plus the toxicology report, plus the forged deed, we aren't offering a plea deal. We are going for the maximum. Elder abuse in the first degree, grand larceny, forgery, and attempted murder. What's the maximum? I asked. 25 years, Miller said. And given that he has prior offenses in other states, fraud in Nevada, bad checks in Florida, the judge won't be lenient. Leaving the courthouse that day, I felt a strange mix of exhaustion and validation. For so long, Brad had made me feel like I was the crazy one. He called me paranoid. He called me jealous. He told the whole family I was difficult. But the ledger proved I was right. Every suspicion, every gut feeling I had ignored for years, it was all true. Victoria, Mom said as we walked to the car. I need to go see him. I stopped. What? No. Absolutely not. I need to, Vic. Not to forgive him. But to close the door. If I don't look him in the eye one last time, he'll always be a monster under my bed. I need to see him as just a man. I looked at Sarah. She nodded. She's right. It helps. So we arranged it. A visitation at the county jail. Brad was behind glass. He was wearing an orange jumpsuit that washed out his complexion. His hair, usually perfectly styled, was greasy. He looked 10 years older. When he saw Mom, he didn't look remorseful. He looked angry. You look happy, he sneered into the phone receiver. Mom picked up her side of the phone. She didn't sit down. She stood tall. I am happy, Brad, she said. I'm alive. You ruined my life, he spat. You and that bitch sister of mine. You set me up. You knew I needed money. You watched me drown. I watched you try to kill me, Mom said simply. I wouldn't have killed you. Brad protested, his eyes wide with that terrifying conviction of a liar who believes his own lies. I was going to put you in a home. A nice home. I just needed the house. You needed the house more than you loved your mother, Mom said. That's the truth, Brad. And the truth is what put you in this cage. Brad slammed his hand against the glass. I'm your son. You owe me. I owe you nothing, Mom said, her voice steady. I gave you life. I gave you education. I gave you chances. You took them all and demanded more. The ATM is closed, Brad. Permanently. She started to hang up. Wait. Brad panicked. Mom. Please. I can't do prison. I'm not like these people. I'm a Sterling. Mom. Mom paused. She looked at him with a profound, pitying sadness. No, Brad, she said softly. You're not a Sterling. Sterlings protect their family. You're just a thief with my last name. She hung up the phone. She turned around and wheeled her chair toward the exit, not looking back once at the men screaming silently behind the glass. It was the hardest thing I've ever seen her do. And it was the bravest. 6 months later. The courtroom smelled of wood polish and old paper. It was the smell of judgment. The seasons had changed outside. The leaves were turning orange and gold, mirroring the jumpsuit Brad was wearing as he was led into the courtroom. He had lost weight. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a jittery, nervous energy. The gallery was full. Not with Brad's friends, they had all vanished the second the handcuffs went on. The gallery was full of our people. Sarah was there, looking radiant in a blue dress, holding the hands of her 2 children. My friends were there. Mom's retired teacher friends were there. And Mom. Mom sat in the front row, not in a wheelchair, but sitting upright, her hands folded in her lap. The trial had been short. The evidence was overwhelming. The black book was the nail in the coffin. Dr. Lowe had taken a plea deal, testifying against Brad in exchange for a reduced sentence, and the permanent loss of his medical license. Nurse Maria had done the same. Brad stood alone. Mr. Sterling, the judge began. Judge Patterson was a stern man with no patience for white-collar nonsense. You have been found guilty on all counts. Before I pass sentence, do you have anything to say? Brad stood up. I braced myself for an apology. I hoped, for a split second, that he would show some humanity. Your Honor, Brad said, his voice trembling. I want to say that I love my mother. Everything I did because I was under financial pressure. I made mistakes. But I'm a businessman. I'm an innovator. I shouldn't be defined by this one misunderstanding. I ask for leniency so I can rebuild and pay back what I owe. A businessman. An innovator. He was still doing it. Still pitching. Still refusing to say the word steal or hurt. The judge stared at him over his glasses. A misunderstanding. You forged a do not resuscitate order for your own mother, Mr. Sterling. That is not a business error. The judge turned to us. Does the victim wish to speak? Mom stood up. She walked to the podium. She didn't need a cane. She didn't need help. Your Honor, Mom said. Her voice was clear, filling the room. For 42 years I loved that man. I forgave the stolen money. I forgave the lies. I thought that if I just loved him enough, he would become the man I knew he could be. She looked at Brad. But I learned a hard lesson. You cannot love a predator into a protector. My son, the boy I raised, died a long time ago. The man standing there is a stranger who viewed my life as an obstacle to his inheritance. He didn't just try to steal my house. He tried to steal my dignity. He tried to steal my reality. She took a deep breath. I don't ask for vengeance, Your Honor. I ask for safety. I ask that he be kept away from me, from my daughter, and from his own children, until he learns that people are not assets to be liquidated. She walked back to her seat. The courtroom was silent. Even the court reporter had stopped typing for a second. Judge Patterson nodded. He looked at Brad. Bradford Sterling, the judge said. Your actions were calculated, cruel, and driven by a level of greed that shocks the conscience. You preyed on the one person who should have been able to trust you implicitly. Please, Brad whispered. For the charge of grand larceny, I sentence you to 5 to 10 years. For the charge of elder abuse in the first degree, 7 years. For the charge of forgery, 3 years. These sentences are to run consecutively. Brad's knees buckled. His lawyer grabbed his arm to hold him up. That is a total of 15 to 20 years in state prison, the judge concluded. Additionally, I am issuing a permanent restraining order. You are to have no contact with Helen Sterling, Victoria Sterling, or Sarah Sterling. The gavel banged. Crack. The sound was final. It was the sound of a heavy door slamming shut on a lifetime of fear. Brad was crying now. Loud, ugly sobs. Mom. Sarah. Don't let them take me. The bailiffs moved in. They cuffed him. They led him away. He looked back over his shoulder, his eyes wide with panic, searching for someone to save him. But there was no one. The golden child had finally run out of gold. As the door closed behind him, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders that I hadn't realized I was carrying since I was a child. The constant anxiety, the need to protect Mom, the fear of what he would do next, it was gone. Sarah let out a long, shaky breath. It's over. It's over, I agreed. We walked out of the courthouse into the bright autumn sunlight. The air felt crisp and clean. So, Mom said, putting her sunglasses on. Who's hungry? I could eat, I smiled. Good, Mom said. Because I'm buying. With my own money. Which is finally, actually safe. We went to lunch, not as victims but as survivors. We toasted with iced tea. We laughed. Sarah's kids played with the salt shakers. It was such a normal, mundane scene. And that was the beauty of it. Brad had wanted a life of yachts and luxury, bought with blood money. We just wanted a quiet lunch without fear. And we had one. But the story didn't end there. Because when you go through hell and come out the other side, you don't just go back to normal. You build something better. 1 year later, I parked my car in the driveway of the Sterling house. The transformation was incredible. Gone were the overgrown hedges and the peeling paint from Brad's tenure. The house was bright, painted a cheerful yellow. The garden was blooming with hydrangeas and roses, Mom's favorites. And running across the lawn, barking happily, was Buster the golden retriever, chasing a tennis ball thrown by Sarah's son. I walked up the porch steps. The sound of laughter drifted from the kitchen. Inside, the house smelled of cinnamon and apples. Mom was at the counter, teaching Sarah how to make her famous apple pie. They looked like mother and daughter. Aunt Vic. Sarah's daughter yelled, running to hug my legs. Hey Munchkin, I laughed, picking her up. You're just in time, Mom said, wiping flour off her hands. The pie is going in. This wasn't just a family gathering. It was a board meeting. We sat around the dining table, the same table where Brad had forged the deed. But now, it was covered with files for the Helen Sterling Elder Protection Fund. After the trial, Mom and I decided we couldn't just go back to our old lives. We realized how lucky we were. We had resources. We had me, a forensic accountant, and a great lawyer. But how many other seniors were out there, trapped by their own children, silenced by shame, without anyone to help them? So we started the fund. We got 3 new cases this week, I said, opening my laptop. A grandmother in Ohio whose grandson stole her Social Security checks. A retired vet in Florida whose daughter coerced him into signing over his car. We can help the Florida case, Mom said decisively. I'll call the local APS, and we can fund a consultation with a probate lawyer there. Mom had found her calling. She wasn't just a retired teacher anymore. She was an advocate. She traveled to senior centers, giving talks about the red flags of financial abuse. She told her story openly, without shame. She told them about the Black Book. She told them about the fake funeral. She turned her trauma into armor for others. And Sarah, I said, turning to my sister-in-law. How's the new job? Sarah beamed. I got promoted. Assistant manager at the bakery. And the divorce was finalized yesterday. I have full custody. He didn't even contest it. Good, Mom said. He knows better. We ate pie. We talked about the future. We didn't talk about Brad. He was serving his time in a facility 3 hours away. He wrote letters sometimes, asking for money for the commissary. We sent them back unopened. Later that evening, Mom and I sat on the porch swing. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. You know, Mom said softly. I used to think that if I admitted what Brad was, it would mean I was a failure as a mother. And now? Now I know that my job wasn't to control who he became, she said. My job was to protect the family from who he chose to be. It took me a while, but I did it. You did, I said. You saved us, Mom. She looked at me, her eyes crinkling at the corners. No, Victoria. We saved each other. That's what women do. We weave a net so tight that when one of us falls, the others catch her. I looked out at the garden. At the house that was supposed to be lost. At the dog that was supposed to be dead. At the family that was supposed to be broken. Brad had called me that morning a year ago, and told me I would get nothing. He was wrong. I looked at Mom, healthy and safe. I looked at Sarah, free and smiling. I looked at the piece we had built. I got everything. Thank you for listening to this entire story. It's been a long, emotional journey, and I'm so grateful you stuck with me to the end. You are truly special. Please comment the letter A below so I know you are one of the legends who watched the whole video. And tell me, what would you have done if you were in my shoes? If this story touched you, please share it. There might be someone out there right now who needs to know they aren't alone. Click the next video on the screen to hear another story of justice served. See you there.